Coming up, it's a song that would spawn hundreds upon hundreds of clones. I'm telling you, everyone wanted to be just like his fire-breathing guitarist. Everyone wanted to sound like him, and yes, even dress like him. You know what? That was a good thing, because at this point in this band's career, their commercial prospects were steadily declining. But then everything turned around with a surprise invitation from one of their biggest fans. He also happened to be America's most iconic author. This guy, he was diving into his big screen directorial debut, and he wanted this band to play everything on the soundtrack. Now, this movie wasn't exactly Oscar material, mind you, but his headlining track was something entirely different. It absolutely rocks. And it actually jump-started this band's career. This is going to be a good one. Stories coming up next. You're not going to want to miss it. I'm Professor of Rock, brought to you by Skillshare. Hey, music junkies. Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember calling up radio stations to answer that trivia question or whatever to get your favorite band's new album or concert tickets back in the day, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure that you subscribe below right now. Click the red button and the notification bell so you always know when our latest interviews are dropping. We have some great ones coming this fall. We also have a Patreon. You're going to want to check that out. There you'll find an additional catalog of exclusive content. You can become an honorary producer and help us keep this music alive. It is a self-funded channel that helps us immensely. So today we're returning to one of the biggest bands on the planet. We're going to cover a song that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle of their playlist of never-ending hits. You know, this is a song that is truly deserving of our undivided rock and roll attention. It's from their 1986 soundtrack album. I'm talking about AC/DC with Who Made Who. Man, there's a great story behind this one. So, you know as well as I do. I mean, AC/DC opened up the 80s by smashing all kinds of records with their seminal album, Back in Black. They were kicking in teeth left and right. I mean, the album is chock full of landmark rockers, and even 4 decades later, Back in Black is still as popular as it ever was, boasting streams, running in the hundreds of millions, even billions per song. And talking about tracks like Shook Me All Night Long, Shoot the Thrill, Hell's Bells, and Back in Black, just to name a few. They've all become essential rock standards, though. But after such a strong start to the decade, AC/DC's next 3 studio albums saw a steady decline, dropping from the epitome of rock to something somewhat pedestrian. This series of lukewarm albums, although they had their bright spots, I mean, don't get me wrong, but they were packed with more filler than killer. Talking about 1981's For Those About to Rock, We Salute You, 1983's Flick of the Switch, and 1985's Fly on the Wall. They've all been viewed as a notch or two down from the glories of the 70s and 80s run, early 80s run. You know, maybe our expectations were just a lot higher after Back in Black. But as AC/DC progressed through the 80s, it was a bit like they'd lost their edge for a little bit there. But in 1985, AC/DC made a move to reverse that trend, thanks to a surprise invitation from one of their biggest fans. Actually, while AC/DC was out promoting Fly on the Wall, they were contacted by the infamous horror author Stephen King. I mean, obviously one of the most iconic ever. King was a devoted AC/DC disciple. He asked the band if he could include some of their old material in the soundtrack for his new movie, Maximum Overdrive.
Maximum Overdrive.
Yep, blast from the past. Seemed like a win-win situation. The thing is, for years, AC/DC had consistently refused to repackage their old material. They viewed greatest hits compilations as shameless cash grabs and an affront to their fans. But for some reason, Stephen King's offer, it just felt right. Maybe it was because it wasn't a straight-up best-of compilation. Maybe it had something to do with King's flattering approach. Who wouldn't be flattered? Reportedly, the author tracked the band down and sang them one of their own songs, Ain't No Fun Waiting Around to Be a Millionaire, of course, from Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. Said King about it, I like rhythm and blues, I like rock and roll. AC/DC, I like a lot. Very loud. And well, as it turned out, AC/DC, they were big Stephen King fans as well, so they agreed to let him use their music. Besides, maybe putting out a movie soundtrack could shake things up for him. At the time of the project, it seemed promising. Honestly, though, I wonder what exactly King pitched him. I've thought about that. Because, looking back on it, nothing about this movie seems promising at all. We'll get to that. Maximum Overdrive was a loose adaptation of Stephen King's short story Trucks. Featured not only your standard cast of human characters, but also a gang of homicidal machines. Apparently, everything mechanical comes to life thanks to a radiation storm kicked up by a passing comet. Chaos ensues as machines across the world turn on their human creators, intent to kill. The plot then zeroes in on a group of survivors holed up in a North Carolina truck stop. It's kind of an 80s gem, if you remember it. I saw it on VHS at a friend's house, and I know my parents would not have approved.
Maximum King.
Maybe tomorrow will be our world again.
Gosh, I have not seen that movie in decades. Not the first Stephen King story to hit the big screen, of course, and certainly not one of his best. It, however, does hold the distinction of being the only movie that the horror author has directed. According to Angus Young, Stephen King had particular AC/DC tracks in mind when he shot the film, and he actually wrote the screenplay to the music so that it would fit along with it. The 9-track collection features songs from 4 previous albums: Ride On from Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, Hell's Bells and You Shook Me All Night Long from Back in Black, the title track of For Those About to Rock, We Salute You, and then Sink to Pink and Shake Your Foundations from Fly on the Wall.
I'm gonna ride on.
But that wasn't all. Stephen King also asked the band to write some new songs exclusively for this movie. The project was AC/DC's first attempt at writing music for a motion picture. The band came up with 3 in all. 2 of them were instrumentals called DT and Chase the Ace. And then the headliner track, Who Made Who? As soon as AC/DC wrapped up their U.S. tour in December of '85, they jetted off to the Bahamas to take on this project. There at Compass Point Studios, they teamed up with producers George Young and Harry Vanda for the very first time since 1978's live offering, If You Want Blood, You've Got It. Said Malcolm about it, we have the old team of Vanda and Young, back producing the title track, and I think that is what we needed. Who Made Who was a return to form for the band, end of quote. The entire project, it only took 2 weeks to finish. That's lightning speed compared to their time with Mutt Lange. So let's take a moment, though, and mention today's sponsor, Skillshare. If you're looking for ideas to take on a stimulating new hobby or find some creative inspiration, check out Skillshare. It's an online learning community with thousands of classes presented by like-minded creatives and teachers. I've always been interested in learning to be better at photography. I found a really cool class for that, as well as one on graphic design. The class is called Storytelling Through Graphic Design and Photography with Sin Lagos. Skillshare is a fun community to learn how to start a new business, or if you want to go freelance. There are thousands of classes to immerse yourself in, and there's really something for everyone here. If you want to unlock your creativity and learn something new, then I highly recommend Skillshare for you. The first 500 people to use the link in the description below will get access to one of Skillshare's best offers, 30 days free and 40% off your first year of Skillshare membership. Check it out. By mid-January 1986, AC/DC was back on the road. Angus, who was happy with their efforts, told Guitar World the following March, "We think we've done a good job and we achieved what we wanted to. We just wanted to make a tough and exciting rock and roll record, and that's what we made." So Brian, Angus, and Cliff also connected with Stephen King for a cross-continental interview about the project. This was on MTV back in the day. Man, MTV had some good stuff back then. King, who posed as a guest VJ, he sat in a recliner and he asked some generic questions to the band.
With Stephen King in mind.
Well, listen,
I appreciate you coming on the show.
As for the status of the movie Maximum Overdrive, that was released the following summer on July 25th, 1986. Unfortunately, King's directorial debut was an unqualified bust. The result was essentially a campy B-movie horror flick. Actually crashed and burned at the box office and only grossed $7.4 million worldwide on a budget of $9 million, so it lost some money. The reviews were not kind and continue not to be. Currently on Rotten Tomatoes, Maximum Overdrive holds a rancid 15% critic score and a 50% audience score. Years later, Stephen King would admit that all through the production, he was coked out of his mind and that he really didn't know what he was doing. The band only got to see the movie just before it was released, and what had seemed promising in the planning stages clearly wasn't that anymore. The good news is, the box office bomb had little to no impact on the soundtrack's success, however. Fortunately for the band, Who Made Who, the album, it got a head start on Maximum Overdrive by a couple of months. Dropped in the US on May 20th, 1986, I believe was the day. AC/DC's new record became their biggest hit in years. It peaked at number 33 on the US Billboard 200, and it went to number 11 on the UK charts. In Canada, it went to number 12, and in their home turf in Australia, it bested all of them. It reached number 4. Who Made Who, it became their best-selling package since Back in Black, boasting over 6 million copies sold. The song itself is one of their strongest offerings of the 80s, in my opinion. After, of course, Anything and Everything for Back in Black. A hard-stomping track punctuated by Angus's Eddie Van Halen-style tapping. Very cool. The subject matter is directly related to Maximum Overdrive. Who Made Who poses the question, who's really in charge here? Humans or machines? Who really rules this planet? You know, and as laughable as the movie was, it actually is a pretty provocative question. The lyrics invoke video games, databanks, and satellites as examples. For instance, are we playing the video games or are they playing us? Eating up all our time and all our dimes. Who's really turning the screws, as the song says? It also asks whether we are in control of our own lives, or are we just slaves to technology? Which, of course, decades later, the question is more relevant than ever. As we find ourselves plugging into machines and modern technology 24/7, from smartphones to computers and gaming consoles to appliances, transportation, satellites, and military technology, for good or bad, our lives depend on these man-made mechanical marvels. And I'm saying all of that without even talking about artificial intelligence. I mean, you look at what's going on out there, and AC/DC seems to have really nailed it. I mean, and they did it like 40 years ahead of their time. They say, who made who made you? If you made them, they made you. I think one of the cooler stories connected to this song has to do with the music video, though. The shoot was directed by David Mallet in February of '86 at the Brixton Academy in London. Not only did it feature the band, but also an army of Angus Young clones. Something like 300 members of AC/DC's fan club and others who heard about the event on radio lined up to put on the iconic Angus Young schoolboy uniform. The AC/DC faithful came from all over the UK. Some even sleeping in the freezing cold to get their chance to be in an AC/DC music video. The Angus impersonators not only dressed the part, but they were given a cardboard guitar as well. So you have all these cardboard guitars. Heads down, these clones marched in place throughout the video as their Angus overlord rocked out above them. Other scenes in the music video show the creation of the replicas by robotic scientists, and of course, the band is also performing on stage. Not sure that the world is big enough to hold more than one Angus, but I'll say the video, wholly entertaining. Things got even more interesting, though, when AC/DC took this Angus army out on the road. Starting in the summer of 1986, the band played 37 dates across America and then another 5 nights in Canada. Well known for putting on a hell of a show every time. AC/DC has featured all kinds of props throughout the years, from Hell's Bell to Cannon Fire to an inflatable Rosie to Angus Bucks, raining from above. They've never skimped on their live show. But this time around, the tour featured Who Made Who as the opener. So it's no surprise the band included 10 to 30 Angus doppelgangers on stage every single night. Local fans and contest winners dressed up as the Aussie Guitar Hero, just like in the music video. And if you think a 1.5-ton bell was a logistical nightmare, it's nothing compared to these Angus wannabes. According to Pyrotechnics mastermind Pyro Pete Cappadocia, who worked with AC/DC, having these guys on stage was absolute mayhem, said Pete about it. When you get the show up, and running, it becomes like a machine that just runs. It's like one of those huge printing presses that you can't just turn off or it'll just rip itself apart. For the Who Made Who tour, there were winners for an Angus lookalike contest. The show would start, and they would be up along the back line of the stage with their cardboard guitars, doing their best Angus impersonations. And then the real Angus would rise up on an elevator in this tube in the center. We had a signal where we would grab the first fake Angus from behind and they would turn around and come off the stage back, down the same way that they went up. Or at least that was how it was drawn up. According to Pete, sometimes these guys, they just refuse to get off the stage. And then they start running around in the middle of this performance. It's like trying to catch a chicken, is what they would say. The crew couldn't interrupt the performance, of course, so they would be off to the side throwing things at these guys, poking them with a yardstick or whatever they could get their hands on to try to get them off the stage. More than once, it was a complete fiasco. Pete remembers one time they were poking this one guy really hard to get his attention. It wasn't working, so they grabbed him by the ankles and pulled him to the ground. Only after he fell over, he just started rolling around like he was doing an Angus Young solo. The band had no idea what was going on except for drummer Simon Wright. He saw the whole thing and he was just cracking up the entire time. Finally, someone wrestled this guy off stage, but even as he was being dragged away, he was pumping his fists in the air like a victory salute. I mean, it's so funny. I wish we could see some video footage of this. Maybe there is some. If there is, share it in the links below. According to Pyro Pete, though, stage crews always cringed whenever they heard the words contest winner. Clearly, Who Made Who was a popular live offering. In fact, Malcolm called it one of their most popular live tracks. Yet curiously, the song would fall by the wayside. From what I can tell, AC/DC stopped playing it in concert sometime in the 90s. According to Setlist.fm, the band hasn't played Who Made Who consistently on tour since about 1990. Talked about something similar to this on the Money Talks video we did. That song got booted from AC/DC setlist as well. How would it be to have such a glorious musical catalog that you can render two of your biggest hits obsolete by choice? I'm sure the band, they have their favorites. Maybe Who Made Who just wasn't one of them. Maybe the Clones were too big of a pain in the butt, or maybe we're just too many classics to fit into each show. That's probably what it is. Has anyone seen AC/DC play this one in concert since the 90s? Let us know below. Whatever happened, there's no denying that Who Made Who was one of the most important songs for this band in the 80s. It was just a shot in the arm for them. Critics praise it as their most successful single in years. It actually reached number 23 on the US mainstream rock chart. Their strongest single since For Those About to Rock. Since that one climbed to number 4 in 82. Internationally, Who Made Who reached number 35 in New Zealand, went to number 16 in the UK, and it hit the top 10 in Australia, went to number 9. Now, in terms of pop culture, like its concert performances, Who Made Who just fell off the map. Movies, television, cover versions, completely MIA. Kind of a head scratcher since AC/DC has such a large pop culture footprint. I guess the pop culture thing here is Maximum Overdrive. Very interesting. But as far as the impact that this song had on AC/DC's career and their legacy, it was kind of a big deal. Who Made Who helped AC/DC scratch their way out of the so-called mid-80s slump. Now, that's a word I use loosely since a slump for AC/DC means going platinum instead of multi-platinum. It means selling 3 million copies instead of 20 million copies. There's no doubt that this song was a much-needed boost for this legendary band. Look, I know you can't really call Who Made Who a hidden gem, But I'll say that in AC/DC's never-ending catalog of massive hits, I think a lot of times it gets forgotten. I don't know. What do you think? Let us know below. So this song was one of the songs that got blacklisted by parents in our community when I was growing up in Idaho because it was name-checked in a book about music that was satanic or immoral. The claim was that AC/DC was trying to question if there was a God, because of the lyrics, "Who made who?" And apparently that would turn believers into atheists. I remember my mom getting after me about this song and telling me it was devilish. And I was arguing my side with the lyrics. I happened to have the liner notes there, and I threw out kind of a lifeline to my dad, my rock and roll loving dad. And I showed him the lyrics and told him what the song was really about, machines versus human beings. And my mom was not buying it. She said, "No, my friend said she took her son's cassette away because this song is trying to question if God exists." Well, thankfully, my dad had my back. He said, "Listen, I'm reading the lyrics here, and I don't see anything that suggests it's anything about that." My mom continued to protest. So, my dad said, "Hey, bring the cassette down. We'll play it in our stereo." We had a stereo in our front room. So I ran upstairs, got it, and we played the song. So about 2 minutes into the song, my dad was doing this silly little dance that he always did when jamming to music, and he was singing the chorus. It was so funny. My mom and I were just laughing our heads off. And, that was the last I heard about the song being devilish. I could always count on my dad. Thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about AC/DC and Who Made Who, this incredible song. What are your memories of the song, of the movie, of the soundtrack? Let us know in the comments below. Let's have a good discussion about this. This is kind of a blast from the past. How many of you have seen Maximum Overdrive in the last few years? I haven't seen it since I was probably 12. Anyway, let's have a great discussion below. If you like our content, we do invite you to subscribe. We'd love to have you. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.